The moment my neighbor said it, the air around us seemed to crack open, as if the quiet afternoon had been waiting all along for a truth neither of us had planned to confess. I had just come back from what I thought was a harmless date, my mind still foggy with polite smiles and forced laughter, when one simple sentence from next door changed the direction of my life. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us how unexpectedly love can find us. My name is Matthew, and I live in a small town tucked between fields and fading highways in Ohio, the kind of place where people wave from porches and remember your business before you do. I had moved there 3 years earlier after a quiet personal collapse that never made headlines but felt loud enough to shake my bones. A broken engagement, a job that downsized me out without warning, and the slow realization that I'd been living on autopilot left me needing somewhere still and ordinary to land. The house I rented was modest, with creaky steps and a porch that caught the sunset just right, and next door lived my neighbor, a woman named Rebecca, who had been there long before I arrived and who seemed to know the rhythms of the neighborhood like a hymn she had sung all her life. Rebecca was the kind of presence you didn't notice all at once, but felt missing when she wasn't around. She volunteered at the local church pantry, took long walks every evening no matter the weather, and had a habit of leaving her porch light on even when she wasn't expecting anyone. At first, we were only polite, exchanging nods and brief updates about the weather or the mail, but over time those small interactions became anchors. When my car wouldn't start one winter morning, she brought out jumper cables without me asking. When her dog fell ill, I watched her sit on the porch steps late into the night, quietly praying, and something in me softened toward her without me realizing it. The date I had gone on that evening was with a woman named Hannah, someone I met through a coworker who thought we would be a perfect match. On paper, we were. We liked the same movies, laughed at the same jokes, and both said we wanted stability. But as we sat across from each other in a dim restaurant in Columbus, I felt nothing bloom inside me. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't alive. I drove home telling myself that not every connection had to feel like fire, that maybe comfort was enough, but my chest felt heavy with a sadness I couldn't name. When I stepped onto my porch, Rebecca was outside, watering her plants as the sky shifted from blue to amber. I mentioned casually that I'd just been on a date, not thinking much of it, just filling the space with words. She paused in a way that felt heavier than silence, looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, and said something that stopped time inside me. She told me, in her own steady way, that the woman I had been with would never love me the way she already did. There were no raised voices, no dramatics, just a truth laid gently between us like a fragile offering. That night, I barely slept. I replayed every interaction I had ever had with Rebecca, every small kindness, every lingering look I had ignored, because it felt safer not to notice. I realized how often she had shown up for me without asking for anything in return, how she had listened when I talked about my failures, how she remembered details about my childhood church and my mother's favorite hymns. I had mistaken her constancy for simplicity, her steadiness for a lack of depth, when in reality it was the bravest form of love I had ever known. The following weeks were uncomfortable and transformative all at once. I struggled with guilt for not seeing her sooner and fear of what acknowledging her feelings might change. Hannah texted, suggesting another date, and I stared at my phone for hours before replying honestly that I wasn't ready to continue. I worried about losing Rebecca's friendship if I handled things poorly, worried about ruining the fragile balance of our shared routines. But every time I saw her across the fence or passing on her evening walk, there was a quiet patience in her eyes that told me she wasn't asking to be chosen out of pressure, only out of truth. Life, however, doesn't pause while you sort out your heart. Around that time, my mother fell ill in Indiana, and I found myself driving long distances on weekends, exhausted and emotionally raw. Rebecca noticed the change before I said anything. She left meals on my porch with handwritten notes offering prayers and strength. She never pushed for conversation, never reminded me of what she had said, but her presence wrapped around me like a shelter I hadn't known I needed. In the hospital waiting rooms, surrounded by beeping machines and whispered fears, I realized that the person I wanted to talk to most was the woman next door. When my mother passed peacefully one early spring morning, grief cracked me open in ways I hadn't expected. I returned home hollowed out, unsure how to step back into a world that felt permanently altered. Rebecca came over that evening, not with words meant to fix anything, but with quiet companionship. We sat on the porch as night fell, the same porch where my life had shifted months earlier, and I felt something inside me finally give way. I understood then that love wasn't always a lightning strike. Sometimes it was the steady light left on, waiting for you to come home. Over the next year, our lives intertwined slowly and deliberately. We learned each other's fears and habits, our different ways of praying, our shared belief that love was a choice you made every day, especially when it was hard. There were challenges, moments when my old instincts to withdraw surfaced, when Rebecca's passed. Hurts made her cautious, but we faced them with honesty and faith. The small town noticed before we said anything publicly, smiles growing knowing, casseroles appearing unannounced, as if the community itself was blessing what had been quietly growing all along. As I stand here now telling this story, I think about how close I came to missing the love that was already loving me. I think about how often we chase what looks right while overlooking what feels true. Rebecca didn't rescue me, she walked beside me until I was ready to see her. That kind of love changes you, humbles you, and teaches you to be braver than you thought you could be. If this story has touched your heart, if it has reminded you of someone who loved you quietly or encouraged you to be more honest with yourself, please take a moment near the end of this video to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive and reaching those who need them most. And just before we close, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below with the words "steady love" if this story resonated with you, because sometimes the simplest expressions carry the deepest meaning. I didn't find love by searching harder or dating more. I found it by finally seeing what God had placed right next to me all along. And if you're listening to this feeling uncertain or overlooked or afraid to hope again, know this: love may already be waiting closer than you think, patient, faithful, and ready when you are.